Hello everyone, welcome. My name is Melinda Hart. You are watching Stamping with Hart. You can find more information about this card and more on my blog at www.stampingwithhart.blogspot.com. Today's card, we are going to be using the Santa Express Designer Series paper. We're also going to be using the stamp set, and I am going to be incorporating a few other products as well, including the scallop contour dies and these super cute adhesive back stars. They come in two sizes. Aren't they cute? Oh my gosh, I love them. They're iridescent, so they have sort of like a pinkish kind of gold look and feel to them. And this card is not too difficult to make. So what I wanted to do with this card, you can see the little scene with the Santa and Mrs. Claus dancing. And I knew I wasn't going to be able to include this in my card class. So I decided to do this as my Facebook Live project because I thought it was too cute not to do. So here you see the sheet of Designer Series paper. This is the Santa Express Designer Series paper. And you can get 3 of these scenes per sheet. And then, of course, use the scraps for something else. But there are 2 sheets that come in the pack. So technically you could get 6 cards if you were to do this particular layout, if you love the way that they are dancing. So there is that part of it. And then the other thing that I'm going to be going over with you today is my Santa Express September online card class. And I will show you the cards and everything for that towards the end of the video. So stay tuned for that. But if you want to learn more, there is a link in the description box below that you can learn more about the card class. And I will have information up on my blog as well. Okay, so in terms of making this card, we're going to do the A2 size card in mint macaron cardstock. This is 5.5 by 8.5, scored at 4 1/4. That card will fit nicely into a medium size envelope. For our color theme, we're also going to be using Poppy Parade cardstock. We're going to be using the Glimmer paper in Evening Evergreen. So there is this 12 by 12 Glimmer pack of paper that you can get that's very vanilla gold in Evening Evergreen. It's so beautiful. I've used it multiple times now. I love just the little fancy pop of shimmer, especially on holiday cards. I can't resist. I was using them on the fall cards recently. So here, what I wanted to show very quickly was, depending on how you cut apart your paper, I cut it a little bit close with this dancing couple here. So I decided to go to the lower option. But what I would do with that Santa and Mrs. Claus is just use a slightly smaller rectangle. So I would just grab a stitched rectangle die and cut it that way, or you can just cut it with your trimmer and not worry about having a die on it. You can certainly use it. The other thing is those little North Pole signs, you can actually cut those out of the Designer Series paper with the coordinating dies from the bundle. The bundle, I believe, is called Santa's Delivery, and you can actually purchase the Suite option, which has all of the coordinating products, including the paper, and that is called the Santa Express Suite. So if you have any questions about that, you can let me know. But what I decided to do was do 2 layers in this specific die. This is the largest die from the scallop contour dies. It measures about 4 by 5 1/4 inch. And I'm cutting around. I want to make sure that I get Mrs. Claus's cloak in line in the rectangle there so that I don't trim that out. And the reason that I am cutting this one out with the fancy edges and also the glimmer paper in the fancy edges is to create a very light shadow effect with the layer. And that is optional if you would rather just cut this out in a typical rectangle or in a stitched rectangle size to fit inside the frame for the Evening Evergreen. You can absolutely do that. This is that glimmer paper. Isn't it beautiful? So what I'm doing is I'm just trimming out a piece so that I can die cut this. I recommend cleaning the little pieces out if there are any little pieces left over in your die before you cut the next round. Oh my gosh, this paper is so beautiful. So what I decided to do with this glimmer paper was literally cut it into a frame. And I'm showing this to you for a couple of reasons. I do this as a design element on my cards often, and this is something that I will also be doing in my card class. But just in case, you haven't taken a class from me yet, or you haven't seen me create this particular look, I really love the look of frames. So you could just cut this as one layer and put Santa and Mrs. Claus dancing on top of it by just cutting out the rectangle and not having to do a second cut. But I wanted to frame it in. So I'm going to cut this a second time with my stitched rectangle so that all I have left is the frame. And we will, of course, use the rectangle piece on another project. But for this one, I wanted a frame. So this is this is like a common thing that I do with all of my layering dies. So my layering circle dies, my stitched rectangle dies, my scallop contour dies. If I'm able to nest something inside of another one, I will often turn it into a frame. And you can let me know in the comments below if this is something that you do often as well. But I just think it is such a nice look. And when you have like a really fun detailed edge like we have here with this die, it's really nice to occasionally kind of do that little shadow effect where we have the lighter color paper and petal pink that's going to be behind the green. And it just kind of creates a little extra oomph on your card. So that's the piece that we're going to set aside for later. We now have our frame. And there isn't much stamping on this card actually. We're going to use Evening Evergreen ink to do our stamping. We're going to stamp the Merry Christmas sentiment. And I ended up trimming this down to size. So what I did was I stamped it and then I trimmed down the layer so that it was very close. For my Poppy Parade layer, it's going to be the same size as the die. So 4 by 5¼ inch on this particular piece. And this will be the piece that will frame in our die basically. And then we'll frame our two die cut layers. And that Merry Christmas, I believe that was 3/4 inch by 1 3/4. So you can double check it. I was trying to get a measurement on it because I didn't have my ruler handy. But just, if you have your paper trimmer, you can trim it down to size as long as you can see your Merry Christmas is basically what it comes down to. And then we also have an inside panel for the card. Mint Macaron is light, so you don't need this, but I like the look of it. So I'm cutting this at 4 by 5¼ as well. And then we'll stamp, I think it's May Your Season Be Jolly or something like that on the inside of the card. So I have a lot of scrap basic white pieces that are either cut at 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch, or 1 inch. And I always keep those on hand for when I'm stamping and making cards because you could always use those for sentiments later. So that's sort of where this came from. I thought that this was a perfect fit on the 3/4 inch size. And then we just trim off that edge. And if you like to use the banners Pick-a-Punch, or if you like to kind of freehand cutting in a little flag or banner edge with your paper snips, you could do that too. I think that would look really cute. Now, depending on the 3 different couples that are on the designer series paper, they may have slightly different positioning. And that was what I discovered with this particular card. So the way that the Santa and Mrs. Claus looked on the bottom, I didn't have as much room in the top corner next to her head. So what I ended up doing was putting it at their feet on the second card, and you'll see that in a minute. And I wanted to give my friend Roberta a shout out. She sent me that really adorable glue holder, which is so wonderful because it keeps it tipped down and it keeps it very easily to access at your desk. So thank you so much for that, Roberta. I really love that. I highly recommend it for anybody who uses glue as much as I do. It comes in handy, believe me. So what we're going to do here is we're going to glue our 2 panels in place. And I wanted to be careful that I kept Santa's hat, in the picture, like so that it wasn't covered up by this frame. So you'll see how I create like this really light shadow layer here. And you can see how that petal pink is peeking out on the finished card. We're going to recreate that same look here. And on this layout, you can see that they're a little higher up to the right, you know, the top right corner, as opposed to being perfectly centered in that first card. So because of that, I very slightly changed my layout, and you might have to do that when you're working with different designer series paper patterns as your centerpiece on the card, but it's so worth it. It's just as cute. You can easily fit the sentiment down at their feet. I don't recommend covering their little ice skates because the ice skates are so adorable. I really wanted to put them on like a little ice pond. I wanted to put them on like a little piece of silver foil, but I decided to just kind of keep it on the simpler side. So you could certainly do that if you want to, especially if you're willing to fussy cut Santa and Mrs. Claus. But this card is for those of you who don't like fussy cutting, and there's still a way to, you know, use your designer series paper without having to fussy cut everything. So just grabbing some of my dimensionals. The only thing that I have on dimensionals on this card is the sentiment. And if you would prefer to keep it flat, you could very easily do that. You're getting a lot of shimmer and glimmer here. And you can see, I'm just showing everybody, you can still put it in that top corner, caddy corner, if that's the way that you would prefer it. But I just didn't like that I didn't have enough room. So that's why I decided to put it down at the bottom. And we're going to finish this card with some adhesive back stars. So for those of you who are interested in the actual Santa Express online card class, please stay tuned. I'm going to have all 6 cards that I'm going to show here in just a minute that are part of the class. I was not going to be able to include this card in the class because I would have to buy too many packs of designer series paper. So this is a card that you guys can use with your designer series paper if you so choose to. But the other 6 cards I will be using in the class. So if you are not familiar, or if you're new to my channel, I do an online card class every month that is pre-recorded. I typically announce the card class at the beginning of every month. And since we are just now in September, my September online card class is going to be the Santa Express online card class. I am not using every single item from this suite, but I'm using a good amount of product there. I will be using the Santa's Delivery Bundle. I will be using the designer series paper. I will be using these adhesive backstar embellishments, and I'll go through everything that will come as part of your kit if you sign up. And I will have that link in the description if you would like to learn more about that. But my classes are pre-recorded, so you don't have to attend live. You can watch them at your convenience. So whenever you're ready to assemble your card kits, you can do that. The other thing is, with my cards, everything is pre-cut. So including the die cut pieces will be pre-cut, but you will do all of the stamping and assembly for your card kits. And you know, you may decide that you want the Santa's Delivery Bundle, and that's a possibility, but it's not included automatically in the class, because if you have another stamp set you would prefer to do with these particular card kits, you could do that. But you can add it on if you'd like to. It's not a necessity. So here are the 6 cards. I am going to show you all 6 cards so that you know exactly what you're getting in the class. But like I said, all of the pieces are pre-cut. I will also have a PDF tutorial to go through exactly how I created these cards. I love the whimsical aspect of this card set. I love the color scheme. I love everything about it. My son absolutely loves trains, and if you know somebody who loves trains or who loves Santa, Christmas, penguins, this set is going to be perfect for them. So these are the 6 card kits that you are going to get as part of your class. You would also get a 1/4 6x6 pack of the Santa Express Designer Series paper. You will get iridescent trim as part of this. You're going to get the, there's a 2-pack of embossing folders. I think it's called Charming Landscapes. That's included in the class. And then also a 1/2 pack of those adhesive back stars that I showed you will also be included as part of the class. So you're going to get $22.25 worth of product between the paper, the embossing folders, the trim, and the adhesive back stars. In addition to all of the card bases, envelopes, pre-cut pieces, and die cut pieces for this kit. And you can see that there are also pops of specialty paper and elements as part of this class as well. So there is this beautiful snowflake vellum paper that I will be using just as, you know, a few accents here and there on these cards. I will be using just a teeny tiny bit of silver foil for those train tracks, and then also a little bit of that evening evergreen glimmer paper because I just can't resist. Here are those embossing folders that are going to be included as part of your class. And like I said, the bundle is going to be optional. So here's what those images look like when they are embossed. They are so cute. Okay, and then here are those adhesive back stars. You will get a half pack of this as part of your class, and you will get the half cut so that you get both sizes of the stars. Okay, so that is it. You can find information for the Santa Express online card class in the description box below. The registration closes for my Santa Express class on September 10th, 2022. And be sure to stay tuned for more free tutorials on my channel. If you aren't already subscribed, I would love to have you subscribe, and I will see you again in the next video.